Welcome to Behind the Basket. We're back here on a Thursday. Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. It's time for some NBA basketball. We have so many things to talk about because, the Christmas season has gotten everyone a little bit busy. But despite not having a show for a little bit, we have had plenty of NBA basketball, a lot of great games, wonderful performances, and we're just going to kick things off with the Bucks setting a new three-point record. So last night, or maybe it was a couple nights ago,
It was 2 games ago.
2 games ago, the Milwaukee, because they played them back to back, right?
Right. And they
So
lost.
played against the Miami Heat, made a record 29 three-pointers. The previous record was 27, set by the Rockets, Elizabeth's very own. In 2019, Milwaukee's previous best for 3 points made was 22. So they shattered their franchise record. It was the first instance out of 109 in league history of a team attempting 50 or more threes in a regular season game and shooting 50% or better. So they made 56.9% of their three-point attempts. So it wasn't that they just chucked threes and happened to make them. They were efficient the entire way.
Okay, so now they broke the record and everything. Every person that hit the floor that night made a three, except for Giannis. He was the only one, and he had a very low night, 9 points. He broke his 108 game streak of having double digits. So that I don't know. To me, it's weird that he doesn't seem to be playing like he was in the bubble or before the bubble even. Is he still your MVP candidate?
I mean, it's only been a few games.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too hasty, changing my thoughts after a couple of rough games. And I mean, it's Miami. Miami gave them troubles in the playoffs, and even though they blew them out of the water in that first game, Miami has figured out a way to slow down Giannis, and they even won the next matchup. Both of these games played without their all-star Jimmy Butler. So, I mean, we'll have to continue to see who, because there's some very clear front runners for MVP right now, but we can possibly expect their production to dip because the first games of the season when everyone's fresh might not be flukes per se, but a little too good to be true.
Right, absolutely. And some of these teams they're learning how to play with each other. They didn't get the training that they normally get every year. So everybody was just kind of thrown together and said, okay, here we go, let's do preseason. So they're still learning each other, all the teams, I would say.
A lot of adjustment, but a lot of teams have looked very, very good. In particular, we've got to talk about the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this team, a lot of people are high on their potential because they have Kevin Durant, former Finals MVP, and Kyrie Irving, who also played a big role in a championship series. Two very high caliber players, but they were both coming off of injury, a very long, somewhat severe injuries, and they had never played with each other before. But they came in the very first 2 games that they played together. They beat their opponents by over 25 points. They had one weird loss to the Hornets.
Yeah, to the Hornets.
But other than that, I think they're undefeated, and they've been looking very, very good.
So the Hornets, that whole night was weird because not the Hornets beat the Nets, the Knicks beat the Bucks by 20 that night. Something else happened. Oh, the Mavs Clips game, I think, was that night too. It's just that was a wild night in NBA. And
absolutely.
It's what's really weird, and I don't know if we want to get on this already, but have you looked at the standings? Even though it's just, it's been like 4 games for most teams. The standings are upside down from what, if you would have asked me what I would have thought coming into this week, who was going to be at the top and everything. I think Orlando Magic is the only undefeated team in the NBA right now.
They actually lost today.
Oh. Well, at least
I think today. Let me see. I don't see there yet. It might have been last night, but they did lose, lost their first game. They're 4-1. But yeah, taking a look at these standings, some of the interesting ones. So LA Clippers are on top of the West. That one loss being an absolute thrashing by the Dallas
yeah,
Mavericks.
that was
The Dallas,
crazy.
that's the only game the Mavericks have won. They lost their other three games. So on top of the West, behind the Clippers are the Phoenix Suns with Chris Paul, the
Hmm.
Sacramento Kings, who have I think they have the longest playoff drought in NBA, active in the NBA right now.
They are
I don't
playing
think they,
Rocket right now, and like, who is it? De'Aaron Fox. He's just shooting threes like crazy. It's ridiculous. Like,
I watched the Kings. They played the Nuggets, who were some preseason favorites, and
yeah.
De'Aaron Fox was incredible. He might be having a breakout season. He's kind of fallen behind the pack. He was
Mhm.
drafted with Jason Tatum, the year that Ben Simmons actually played and had a rookie year. Donovan Mitchell. And
Mhm.
his rookie season, he was kind of ranking with those guys, like, oh, he's pretty close. He's going to be right with them. And then he kind of fell off as the other guys kept rising and got all-star bids. But he's really come out guns a-blazing. He's one of the fastest players in the league. He's really showing
He's
that, but he's also making shots. Like you said, he wasn't always
Mhm.
a consistent shooter. His playmaking has improved. And I think his level of play is really what's carrying the Sacramento Kings right now.
Well, they're looking good right now. It's I'm keeping up with the score because I was totally watching the game before this, but it's 104 Kings to the Rockets 99. Now the Rockets, man, they've had it rough this whole.
Yeah, see,
But we
Rockets
but
are
we can get
actually, this is their,
yeah. If you want to keep going through them, we'll get to them when we get all the way down to them. If you
yeah,
want.
well, if we go through the playoff standings right now, next would be the Utah Jazz. The Lakers are 3-2, which is okay, but knowing the Lakers have the best point differential in the league. Not in the, let me actually check. Yes, best in the league. They're winning their games or playing them, scoring 11.6 points per game more than their opponents, but they've still dropped two games. Then we've just got a whole list of people who are 2-2. The
Mm-hmm.
only team yet to win a game in the West is the Houston Rockets. They are 0-2 right now. If they lose this game, they will be 0-3. They've played one less game
Oh no
because
no
of
no no no.
the first game cancellation with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Okay, so exactly. The first game was canceled because so Ben McLemore tested positive first, and then two other players tested positive. Well, because of that, they wanted to quarantine some of the guys, but for some reason, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, and Eric Gordon, I didn't know you didn't just put Houston stinks on the bottom. What? What are you talking about? Okay,
He's just getting you riled up.
yeah, sorry to get me started. Okay. But anyways, they had to quarantine for 7 days, even though they were testing negative over and over and over
Wow.
again. And so they ended up missing the first two games because of that. So now you really need to change the thing. Thank you. It was driving me crazy. But so now they're playing tonight, and honestly, they all still look good, but it's at first it was like Harden was trying to figure out where he fit in with them because he didn't really get any practice time with any of those guys before they jumped right into the season and all of a sudden they're out. So it looked like Harden was trying to find his place the first half. And he's not doing the ISO taking the ball the whole time. He's passing a lot. But John Wall's shot was off a little bit. He still looks like he's warming up, but he's helping. He's doing plays. He's playing well. So I feel
Yeah,
like
so I just pulled up the box score, and it's intriguing though because I didn't watch the game. If Harden actually is trying to play more of a team style basketball, I would understand how that would lead them to a slow start.
mhm,
And we'll see if they can maybe put something together. This is actually the first game this season that John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, and James Harden have played in the same game. But
right.
look at this.
What happened? Why did you
Who's
make that?
playing the music?
Oh, I don't hear any music.
Oh, oh, that's me. That's ESPN playing an ad. That was weird. Okay. John Wall and James Harden in this game right now. Oh, it just changed. They were both 7 for 18 shooting until it just updated. John Wall just made a shot. He's now 8 for 19. They both have 4 rebounds. They both have 7 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, and 5 turnovers. So their stat lines are almost identical in this game. John Wall just a little bit more efficient, hitting 4 of 4 on his free throws. Harden only 1 of 3. But Harden's got a +2 differential on the floor. John Wall's a -10. So they're really going to have to figure out those rotations. I know when Russell Westbrook was there, they tried to have a lot of time with Russell Westbrook leading the bench.
Yeah. Well,
And
the bench is deep, man. They've got some really good players coming off the bench. Just Jae'Sean Tate, I think that's how you say his first name. He's good defensively. He can shoot. He's a good. He went, I think, undrafted or something. And then Sterling Brown's a good shooter. And then they have Eric Gordon coming in as the 6th man. They've got a great bench. And go ahead.
The guy I want to talk about is Christian Wood.
Yes.
We're talking about how high we were on him before the season. This will be his 3rd game with the Rockets. He's currently at 18 points, 12 rebounds for the game. The previous 2 games combined, he's got an average of 27 points per game and 8 rebounds. So the points will drip down a little bit. The rebounds will shoot up. But those are fantastic numbers. He's only 25, so he's still very young.
Yeah.
If the Rockets can hold on to him, he's putting up incredible numbers. If he can maintain that, it's really promising for the Rockets, who have had kind of a rocky situation this season and last season and kind of looking forward without any picks. You can at least try to build around Christian Wood.
Right. Him and Harden, their chemistry is getting better by the game. They're playing really well together. I think it's just going to be figuring out better chemistry between him and Wall, and it's not that they don't have chemistry, because I wouldn't say that. What, Jake? What do you?
There's only one thing that needs to be figured out in Houston, and that's who's going to trade for James Harden.
There's been trade rumors
Yeah.
for a long time, and I just think his price tag is too big. I saw some stuff today about, Toronto's kind of been dipping their toes into the possibility of a trade. They're having a very rough start, and Pascal Siakam is not playing well. So if Houston were to accept a trade while Siakam's playing horribly. There was also some rumors that C.J. McCollum from the Portland Trailblazers might be part of a trade package to get James Harden to Portland.
That dude can shoot. They played them the other day, and I think he ended up with more points than Harden that night. That was the night Harden had like 17 assists or something crazy, and they lost that game, obviously. But C.J. McCollum, man, he was shooting all night.
He's good. I think he's one of the best players right now who hasn't yet been an all-star, partially because he plays with Damian Lillard. I really don't like the fit of Damian Lillard and James Harden in the same backcourt. But I've also been saying for a while that I think Portland needs to – it's hard because McCollum is such a great player, but him and Lillard, they just haven't really been able to make it work. They made the Western Conference Finals once, but the season before that they got swept, and then the season after they lost in 5 to the Lakers.
Yeah.
I think you need to, while CJ McCollum is still at his peak, you got to flip him for a piece that maybe complements Damian Lillard a little better. They've had some problems with injuries to their forwards and their big men, so maybe they flip them for someone who's more reliable in that position. And they've got some great rookies that can fill in that 2 guard and be some more like 3-and-D guys that work more alongside Damian Lillard than CJ, who kind of relies more on having the ball.
Right. As far as the trade with them go, that's just a 1-team trade, right? Because I know that there's a 2-team or 3-team trade talks about the 76ers, Harden, and Denver. not Harden, in Denver. But I haven't really heard much about the Trailblazers. I hadn't heard that.
I think a trade will definitely be dependent on how well these teams do for the next month. So, for example, the Denver Nuggets have had a rough start. They're 1-3. They've had some pretty decent playoff success in the past couple of seasons. Jokic is averaging a triple-double. So they know that they can be better. They know they have the talent, but they're just not there. So maybe if they continue to lose games, then maybe they pull the trigger on a trade. But if they go and rattle off, they win 10 of their next 8 games, they're going to be like, okay, we don't need a trade. We can work with what they have. Same thing with Toronto. They're one of 3 teams in the East, and we'll get to the Eastern Conference standings in a bit. They're one of 3 teams in the East that haven't won a game yet. If Toronto keeps losing and Siakam still keeps playing kind of just plain badly, then maybe they're like, okay, we'll take him up on the trade. We'll give him Siakam. We'll talk about his past all-star performances. I don't follow a lot, but how does a 3-team trade work? So what would happen is that they'd kind of do some musical chairs.
Yeah.
Where it's not a straight swap. So if we talk about the 76ers, the Nuggets, and the Rockets, let's say Harden.
That Harden would go to the 76ers. Michael Porter Jr. would come to the Rockets from Denver, and Ben Simmons from. So yeah, I mean, it's really just they're kind of saying, well, this is what we've got. And you can have this one, you can have this one, or however, whatever team needs what, and their worth and their contracts have something to do with it too.
Yeah, it's definitely teams usually avoid 3-team trades unless they have to do something to make the cap space work. In the case of a trade that would involve someone like James Harden, who has a monumental contract. And you have like the 76ers have a lot of big contracts that they don't want to give up. They want to keep as many of those players as possible. They would get a 3rd team to try and help kind of facilitate that trade and reward them with like a pick or a bench player with high potential or something.
And sometimes the teams need to get rid of a player. So they'll be like, well, if you take on his contract too, and the player that you want, then you can have them. And then they'll take that player, waive them or trade them or whatever. So it's really it's a lot of numbers.
Yeah. Like, for example, back to the 76ers, let's say Tobias Harris, he got a max contract. Let's say he just plays absolutely horribly. He's only scoring like 10 points or something. And you have that huge contract on. As part of a 3-team trade, you can try to take one of these bottom teams and try to kind of incentivize them taking on that contract for you by packaging it with some picks. So instead of trading to try to get someone back, you're like, please, please, please take Tobias Harris away from us, and we'll give you a 1st-round pick for doing it for us. Because usually these bottom teams have a lot of cap space because they don't have a lot of stars, a lot of good players. Although I do think we have a problem with players getting overpaid because these bottom teams have the money and they just decide to pay somebody.
Yeah. The game, the Rockets and Kings game, is very close. I'm sorry, my cats are fighting each other today.
The update is Houston is now up by 5 instead of down. Let's move on to some Eastern Conference standings. What's up, Chad? Good to have you here. Welcome to the show. So right now on top, we've got 3 teams that are 4-1. The Orlando Magic that we talked about, who just lost their last game. The 76ers are also 4-1. And the Indiana Pacers, who have been playing tremendously. I know TJ Warren is out indefinitely. I don't really know what the injury situation is with him. But Domantas Sabonis has been putting up absolutely phenomenal numbers. Victor Oladipo looks more like his old self again. Got a lot of solid people. The Atlanta Hawks that we've talked about a lot on this show are 3-1. They lost a very, very close game to the Brooklyn Nets. They lost by 5 points, and that was just because of a miscommunication at the end where they should have fouled to stop the clock. and instead they let an outlet pass go for a cherry pick dunk, which was unfortunate. But they're young; they'll learn. Got a lot of 3-2 teams, including the Nets, the Boston Celtics, and the surprise Cleveland Cavaliers, who started off 3-0 but have dropped their last two. And then scraping the bottom of the barrel, the Wizards, Pistons, and Raptors are all winless, and the Milwaukee Bucks are only 2-3 despite a plus 10.8 point differential.
The Wizards, I feel bad for Russell Westbrook. That dude has gotten a triple-double every single game, and they have lost over and over and over again. That's unfortunate. I do
think
have our
he's had a
prediction.
triple-double in each one of their games, and they have lost all of them.
Yeah. Like at that point, you gotta change something up before the trade deadline. I
Yeah.
found our predictions from last week. Did you want to go over those today?
Yeah, just let's do that next. I'm pulling up the Washington Wizards stats because I want to take a look because I believe in the Bradley Beal Russell Westbrook partnership. So taking a look at the numbers, Bradley Beal is averaging 32 points per game, 4.5 rebounds and 4.5 assists. Those are incredible all-star numbers. Russell Westbrook is averaging a triple-double, 19 points, so he's kind of pulling back for Beal to do the scoring. 13.7 rebounds and 12.7 assists, which that's absolutely incredible. I know it's early, so those averages will probably dip down.
Right.
But the rest of this Wizards roster is just not good. Like, they're carrying so hard. Their next best player is Thomas Bryant, who, for a center, is only averaging 5.8 rebounds per game, which some will blame on Russ, but even Steven Adams was able to get like close to 10 rebounds a game while playing with Russell Westbrook.
Right.
And he dunked on his own basket in a game a few nights back. So, like, the Wizards are just way too top heavy to compete right now. It's just Beal and Westbrook versus the world, and that's just not going to cut it.
So here, yeah, just hearing those numbers alone, my first question is, where is their defense? Do they have any defense? Because they sound like
if they don't.
Team. But also, as a Houston fan, I can tell you that you cannot win with the offense only. You got to have a defensive player in there. So maybe they can. I mean, they still have time. I think the trade deadline is March 25th. So maybe they can do something.
Plenty of time. And they don't need to make any monumental trades. They just need to get a little bit more depth, maybe a little bit more experience. You know, they have a ton of guys just not being very efficient.
Yeah.
Or just not playing enough games to really make a difference. I had another thought about these Wizards, but I can't remember what it was. So last season, the Wizards had one of the top offenses in the league, but they also had the worst defense, and their defense was so bad that their offense couldn't make up for it. Yeah. The case of the Rockets, they were definitely an offensive team, but they had enough defensive pieces to get key stops to get wins. The Wizards have nobody. Thomas Bryant is averaging 1 block per game. He's the leading blocker for the Washington Wizards. So they don't really have a shot blocking presence. None of these guys, just looking at their names, look or sound like anyone I've remotely heard being good at defense. So that's probably what you got to do is trade for a couple of good defenders and hope that you can stop some of those holes. But they have a pretty big deficit. They're 0-5. That's the worst record in the league by a pretty solid margin. They're going to have a lot of ground to catch up if they want to turn around and become a playoff team.
In the time that we talked about that, the Rockets are winning 115-112, but they went on like an 11-score run and it was all Harden. So I thought that was fun, just because I know Jake loves Harden so much.
Yeah.
But did you watch the game against the Trailblazers?
Who played? Rockets?
The Rockets. Yeah.
I have not watched a Rockets game yet this season.
It was their first game and they went to OT. And so that game was when they had 6 players rolled out. They only had 9 players for the whole
Hmm.
game. And it went into overtime and they were tired. But the very last shot, they were about to tie it again and go into a second overtime when I don't know what Harden did. He like threw away the ball and the clock ran out. It was the weirdest little sequence because you could tell that he had planned to throw it to PJ Tucker, but I guess PJ wasn't there. But he just threw it away and I don't know, it was a weird game at the end. But it showed that that team, like I said, they've got some real good players on the bench. Their bench unit would go up and Harden would sit and they'd get an even bigger lead. But you know how the Trailblazers are in those types of games. They always seem to win those last minute games against the Rockets.
It's Dame time that gets you.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of benches, so we've talked about the potential of the Atlanta Hawks for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
about how good we think Trae Young can be. And then they started signing all these vets where, I expected a team with as much cap space as they did to maybe overpay on like one guy like a Montrezl Harrell
Mm-hmm.
or there was like no good free agents besides him. But then they signed all these veterans and they're just getting great production from Rondo came in and in 15 minutes he had like 8 assists in his first game as an Atlanta Hawk. Bogdanovich is scoring 15 points per game for them off the bench in limited minutes. Danilo Gallinari has only played a couple of games, but his efficiency is fantastic.
I didn't even
And they're
realize
3-1.
up all those people. I mean, I knew we talked about their cap space and everything, but I didn't know that all those guys ended up there. That's crazy.
All 3 of those guys were signings from this year. And those are some pretty, like, a lot of people wanted Rondo as a mentor and as a bench point guard. Gallinari is one of the best 3-point shooting power forwards in the league. And then who's the other? Bogdanovich. There was that whole thing about a sign and trade to the Bucks in an attempt to keep Giannis there and to help them win a title. That was the aspiration behind getting Bogdan. And then he was like, no one told me about this. I'm not going. And then he decided to sign with, of all people, the Atlanta Hawks. And they are looking mighty good to start. Look, Trae Young is averaging 33 points and 8 assists, and he's shooting 50% from the field, which is very good for him because he shoots a very high percentage of threes, which usually brings down your percentage, but he's still averaging over 50% from the field.
Yeah, that's awesome. So they're 3-1 right now. The only team that they lost to was that close call with the Nets.
Close call with the Nets. They were very close, and I blame it mostly on inexperience and partially because Kevin Durant has not lost a step. He has looked very, very good coming back from his injury. I haven't watched enough to say that it's, the Durant of old. Let's look and see what his stats are looking like. Because I know Kyrie Irving, forgot his name for a second. Kyrie Irving has kind of struggled since coming back. He's had some streaks. He made some very, very clutch shots down the line for that Nets win. But before that, he really struggled. Kevin Durant in 4 games, he's scoring 28 points per game, 5.8 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. That's if he continues, this is the most points that he has scored per game since his MVP season, if he keeps this up, which he might not. It's only 4 games, so it's likely to dip.
Right.
But he's putting up numbers right now.
I think that it's just all of the standings are very, very interesting, just compared to what we thought was going to happen. But I think that the Nets are definitely going to be a contender with Durant in the shape that he is in. I think that they're going to be maybe top 3 in the East for sure.
They're looking like it. They did, however, lose Spencer Dinwiddie. I believe he was starting for them at shooting guard, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. He'll definitely be missed. He's a big talent. But Karis LeVert off the bench has been incredible. And I do think he's been a big part of why they're successful. So they're still going to miss the depth that they got from Dinwiddie. But I think a couple of rotation adjustments and they should be just fine. I actually think I grossly underestimated how well Kyrie is doing. He's also scoring 28 points a game with 6 assists, and he's shooting 53% from the field. He's shooting 47% from 3 on 9 attempts, and he hasn't missed a free throw yet.
Now, who is this? Your thing got all choppy when you said.
Oh, it's Kyrie.
Kyrie, okay. See, the only thing I've seen from Kyrie just since the game started was Trae Young throwing some moves on him, and but that's all I've really seen. I haven't had time to watch too closely or anything. Let's see. There was something else about the Nets that I had to say, but I don't remember what it was. Just no, I don't. I think we already talked about it. Never mind. So who else did we go through? Did we finish all the standings? Yeah.
We went through the key ones. We're not going to talk about every team because there's so many of them. One team that we forgot to mention that's probably worth noting. Let's take a look at their record. The Golden State Warriors are 2-2 right now. It doesn't look like they play today. 2-2. They have
those 2 losses, big losses.
Yeah, I was about to say they have the worst point differential in the league, negative 13.5.
Yeah.
But they still won 2 games. The story behind the Warriors is that Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins have been stinking it up hardcore.
Yeah. Kelly Oubre, I don't think I wrote down his name when last week when we were supposed to have the show. And I remembered all the information then, but I just wrote Oubre sucks in my notes. So I think it was something like he hasn't made a 3-point shot at all or something, or made like 1 or something since it started, and he's taken like 17 attempts or something. I don't fully remember. But
yeah, when you wrote that down, oh, this is so bad. He had not made a 3-point shot. He has now. These numbers are so atrocious. Okay, so he's scoring only 7.8 points per game. To put that in perspective, last season he scored 18.7 points per game for the Suns. His career is 10.8. This is where it gets really ugly. So he is averaging 12.5 attempts per game, which is only behind Steph Curry and Andrew Wiggins. He is only making 3.3 shots per game, which is 26% from the field. He is shooting 5.3 attempts from 3 and making 0.3. That is 0.3 per game for a 3-point average of 4.8%.
I've never even heard anything that low.
That is by far, that has got to be the worst volume shooting stretch. Like, that puts prime Russell Westbrook to shame as far as 3-point chucking. That is absolutely, it's not like, oh, he's a center that shoots terrible, but he only shoots like half a 3-point per game. No, he's tied with Wiggins for attempts, second behind only Steph. And he is just bricking them left and right. Wiggins is actually shooting 43% from 3 right now. So he's actually not doing horrible. What he's doing horrible at is finishing. He's only making 34% of his 2-point attempts. He's actually shooting better from 3 than he is from anywhere else.
Well, at least Oubre is not giving up. He's trying.
It's a long season. He might shape up. Curry's averaging 26.5 points and 7 assists, so pretty good, but his shooting is still struggling.
Mhm.
I think it's the new system. He definitely benefited from having Klay Thompson next to him. We have yet to see Draymond Green this year, who
What is going
is
on with him? Why?
he
Why?
had an aggravated injury. It's minor. I think he's coming back soon, but he's missed these 4 games. And he's one of Curry's favorite screeners. He's definitely, people kind of think that he might be doing a little extra ribbing, a little bit of illegal stuff. But the fact is that Draymond makes Steph a much better player and will help him get some more open looks than what he's currently getting, since defenders are clearly not doing anything to stop Kelly Oubre because he is stopping himself.
Yeah. Well, off of the Warriors, but still on the talks of 3-point shots, Ben Simmons made his 3rd career 3-point shot tonight. And it's such a big deal that it was like a headline at ESPN. And all these were like, oh my God, he made a 3. So, I mean, congrats to him. That's a weird stat, but he made it. And then something that we didn't talk about yet. We could do either Daryl Morey or the Mavs Clippers game.
Let's do Mavs Clippers and then Daryl Morey. I just wanted to see for Ben Simmons, this is his 3rd attempt. His 3rd make. This has yet to be updated. He was 2 for 24 for his career, entering his 4th season. So he's now 3 for 25, maybe 26. I don't know how many he's attempted. But just to add a little cliff note to that, 10 of those attempts have been end of shot clock heaves, which I believe may be like half court chucks. So really, his attempts are very, very low, but it's a good sign that he's made one at least. So let's move on to this Clippers game. Mavs Clippers, where the Mavericks absolutely decimated the Clippers to the tune of a 50-point win. 124-73 was the final score. If the Mavericks didn't score in the second half, they still would have won the game.
By 4 points. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But their halftime, I want to say that their halftime deficit broke a record for like the biggest deficit at halftime or whatever, but it was 71 or 77 to 21 or something, like it was something
77-27. It is the largest halftime deficit in the shot clock era, which began in 1954.
That's crazy. And you're saying that's the only game the Mavs have won?
Yeah, it is.
That's crazy.
They've been losing by, I think, a fairly significant margin in their other games. I went to the wrong tab here. Mavericks are 1-3. They actually have their point differential is 1.2, positive 1.2, and that is including the 50-point win over the Clippers in only 4 games. So that's really beefing up their point differential, and they're still barely above even. So they've lost their other games by a fairly significant margin. Let's see. They only lost by 4 to the Phoenix Suns, but then they lost to the Lakers by, it looks like 13, if I did my math right. And then they lost to the Hornets by 19.
Who do the Hornets have that they're suddenly beating the Mavs and the Nets?
Let's look. They got Gordon Hayward.
Oh.
They've got LaMelo Ball off the bench, who's actually been having some good games. Terry Rozier is scoring 24.5 points per game. They actually have they've got 1, 2, 3, 4. They've got 6 people averaging double digits right now with a close 7th.
So what? Do you think that could be a playoff team? Because they're not close to our list before.
I don't know. I'm not gonna buy into them yet. Because I was not a believer of Terry Rozier last season. Of course, I think the Hornets are a better team than they were last season, so maybe there's
Yeah.
some hope that he'll continue his hot streak. He's shooting 40% from three, 50% from the field. LaMelo Ball is starting to gain his rhythm. He went scoreless in his debut, if I remember correctly, but since then he's averaging over 10 points per game, shooting over 50% from three.
His first game was rough. There was like, everybody was like, oh no, he's a bust. But he's doing good now. What did he have? I want to say today or yesterday he had 26 points or something like that. I just read it before we started.
It was the game where they beat the Mavericks, actually. He had an incredible game. Going back to my Mavs tab here. Let's see if it'll pull up the box score. Nice. Okay, so he had a really good game off the bench. Let's find the Hornets. LaMelo Ball, he played 29 minutes. He scored 22 points on 70% shooting, 4 of 5 from three-point land, with 8 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and a block. So he was a big factor in, he actually led the team in scoring that game.
Wow.
Big factor for that big win over the Dallas Mavericks. With Luka, he had a rough night, actually. He only scored 12 points in that game against the Hornets. He's averaging just shy of 24, and he was almost averaging a triple-double last season, and he's only at 5.8 rebounds, 6.3 assists.
Yeah, he was his scoring was a little higher last season too, because he was coming up close to James Harden's 32 points or whatever. I mean, he was close behind. I want to say at 28 or 29.
He was at 28.8, so straddling the line, 9.4 rebounds and 8.8 assists last season. So all across the board, he's dropped, especially in his efficiency. He's only shooting 9.5% from three.
They
so
said
he's
out of shape. That's what the coach said.
Nah, that's kind of what it's looking like. He's right there with poor shooting alongside Oubre, but his finishing has been good. He's shooting 58% from anything that's not a three-point shot.
That's interesting. I feel like the whole basketball world has just been turned upside down. It's
Well, I
weird.
mean, a pandemic and the bubble and all that stuff will do that to you, but we've still seen some really good basketball. There's been some really good games. So just so that everyone's not worried that everyone in the NBA has forgotten how to play basketball, Domantas Sabonis, he had his first All-Star season last year, scored 18.5 points per game, 12.4 rebounds, and 5 assists. Really good all-around big man. Right now, through 4 games, he's upped his scoring to 22 points per game, 11 rebounds, and 7.3 assists. And he's shooting 54%, 45% from the field.
Wow.
And then on the other side of the pond, Nikola Jokic right now is averaging a triple-double of 24.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 13.5 assists, which for a center is insane. And he's scoring at 62.5% shooting with all of this.
And
absolutely, his turnovers are really high, 6 turnovers, but we see those numbers from Harden and Westbrook all the time. So, it's still impressive. Oh, Harden's a turnover machine too, but it happens when you handle the ball as much as these guys do.
Yeah.
You look at their usage rates, the ball is in their hand for the majority of the game. You look at Westbrook before being in Houston, he was coughing up turnovers all the time because he had the ball like every single possession. He had more opportunities to turn over the ball. Same thing with Harden. He's a very ball heavy guy. So
you got to watch you got to watch highlights or something. This is, and by the way, So yay for me.
Let's pull this guy up. Let's look at his turnovers.
Look at what? His turnovers?
Five turnovers right now for Harden. 5.7 is his career high for turnovers in 2016-17.
Okay, now look at Russell Westbrook's.
Oh no, Westbrook is the poster child for
Yeah.
turnovers per game. His actually isn't as bad as I remember. He does have 5.7 this season, but hopefully that drops. But he was under 5 the last few seasons. His highest was 5.4 during his MVP year when he shattered the record for usage rate at 40%, which means that 40% of all possessions ended with Russell Westbrook shooting or getting fouled or something like that. He just did everything.
Well, see, I feel like those last couple games in the bubble, I was so frustrated with Westbrook. It's like every time he got the ball, he turned it over. So that's where I was getting that idea from.
I think Westbrook sometimes, I think his legs are faster than his brain. You know, he's one of the fastest guys in the league, but I think he gets a little too excited going down the court. And, you know, you look at prime Russell Westbrook highlights, he could dunk on anybody. He made some amazing dribble moves to get around people. His MVP season, it seemed like he couldn't miss in the clutch. But sometimes I think thinking about all these things and all the different options he has, you know, he has 4 seasons averaging more than 10 assists. So, you know, he's thinking about dunks and passes and dribble moves. I think he just dribbles right into people way too many times because way too many things are kind of going on in his head.
I would agree with that for sure. Okay, Daryl Morey. So he got fined $50,000 for a tweet that could have been misconstrued as tampering, because we all know that he wants Harden and Harden wants to be with him. It is the greatest love story of all time. They definitely want to be back together. But he posted a tweet that was one of his memories, and he said that it was an automatic post from some app or something, but it was the 1-year anniversary of Harden doing something. I don't remember what it was, but it was just this post about Harden, and he retweeted it, and they fined him for tampering. So I don't know if it was intended that way, but everyone knows how they feel.
I mean, it's interesting. Daryl Morey is definitely a smart guy. He's a great GM. Philly's already seeing success under his leadership, being on top of the Eastern standings through 4 or 5 games that they've played. But he's made it known he doesn't want to trade Simmons or Embiid, which means they'd have to give up Tobias Harris to try and get Harden, which I don't think they can pull off unless Denver throws them Michael Porter Jr., which I also don't think they do. So, like, I would it seems like such a Morey thing to do, to be like, oops, I didn't mean to tamper, and he 100% did the whole time. But it also could have been totally innocent. It was such a simple tweet. It wasn't like anything like, it was just like a graphic from when he was the Houston GM. Like, I don't see a problem with that personally. If he keeps doing it, then
talk going around about how, you know, like everybody knows they want to play together, not play together, but you know that's the situation that they both want, is Harden and Philly. So I think that's why. But you know, people are creating such narratives about Houston now. It drives me crazy, because remember I told you I loved that nothing used to come out of their locker room, and then now, oh my gosh, it's drama every day. There was a Jayshawn Tate, apparently one day Harden threw a basketball at his head, and that was all over my Twitter feed the next day, because they're not getting along. You know, it's like, but Harden got fined for something too.
He got fined for the allegations about him breaking the COVID safety regulations for the league or something, which led to the eventual postponing of their season opener.
Well, so I don't think that's why. That's not why that got postponed. That was because of the Ben McLemore testing positive, and then 2 other rookie players testing positive. That's what led to it actually getting shut down. But he got
So
fined.
there was that whole thing with Harden, though. There
It
was a
was
lot of different assumptions, but I mean, the NBA media and the fans, they've always been about narratives. You
Mhm.
can find dozens of different things about LeBron on the positive side about how he can do no wrong and everything he does is holy and
Right.
sacred. And the people with LeBron breathes and they hate it and they talk about how much they hate it. Russell Westbrook as well. There was the narrative behind his MVP season in his favor. Oh, Kevin Durant left him. And then now look what he's doing. And then, he teams up with Harden. Or why did Kevin Durant leave him? There's that narrative of, oh, Westbrook can't carry a team. He's a ball hog. No one wants to play with
Right.
him. He can't succeed. And for most star players, you're going to find those kinds of narratives. And it's got to be hard to shut all that out. But that's what
Yeah,
these
absolutely.
players got to do.
But and I think that Harden does a good job of that. I think most of them do. I don't think. I think Kyrie is one of the only ones who I'm just like, well, why did you go and say that? Or but I think most of them do a good job of shutting out all of the drama. But I do like the drama too. I'm not gonna lie. Like
It
I
makes
love
it a little more
like watching
entertaining.
a soap opera. All of the drama that's going on. I like it, but at the end of the day, like I'm tired of hearing all of these trade rumors. I just want to know, hey, can we just keep them till the end of the season and then whatever's gonna be, can they just do it already? You know?
Well, I mean, it's the nature of the world we live in now with social media
Mhm.
and access to information or being able to spread false information very, very easily
Yeah.
where you don't know. A lot of these trade rumors, we don't know how many of them are even legit. Like, how many of these are from actual sources, or is it
Yeah.
just people who are really good at Photoshop?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know. I'm just I think I have too much loyalty for like trade season in general. Because as soon as like Austin Rivers, I loved Austin Rivers, and I'm so bummed that they traded him. Clint Capella, I was bummed about that. Like CP3, I was bummed about that, and I don't know. I don't like. I like just I like them staying as long as possible. So
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, but like teams got to make moves. I love Steven
yeah,
Adams, but I've been thinking that we should have traded him for at least a full season before we finally did. As much as I love him, like those are just moves that you got to
yeah.
make, and then I hope he succeeds well with Zion in New Orleans.
See, I can understand that. Like Eric Gordon, I love him as a player. I love him as a Rocket, but his
Move
shooting's
him,
become a little bit
trade him for C.J. McCollum.
I don't think that they could get CJ McCollum for.
No, Eric Gordon's just a worse C.J. McCollum.
I mean, honestly, yes. But oh, it's his birthday today though, so happy birthday to
Who's Eric Gordon?
Eric Gordon. Yeah. Um, let's see. I think that's just. Did Anthony Davis ever recover from his calf strain? Is he playing?
I think he's still out, but I don't think the Lakers play. Yeah, the Lakers don't play today. Um, they do play tomorrow, and he is not on the injury report for tomorrow's game. However, it does say LeBron is day to day. But knowing LeBron, it could just be routine maintenance for him to continue playing at an all-star level at uh, his age. I say that like he's old, but he's only like what 36.
36. That's old for basketball.
And for a professional athlete, yeah, he's 36, and he just turned 36 yesterday.
Oh, okay, you know what I got? I have our predictions we haven't done yet. So we said Warriors versus Nets. That was the first game. We both said that the Nets would win. I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
So they did. Okay. Then the Lakers versus the Clippers. We both said Lakers.
I don't remember. We don't have those games pulled up, do we?
No, I don't. Sorry, I thought you were looking them up as I was saying it. That's why I was pausing.
I had another thought that I pulled up just to fact check myself before I said anything.
Okay, the Lakers versus the Clippers.
Clippers won.
You were both wrong.
They won 116 to 109.
Very interesting. And then
we were wrong.
We were both wrong about the Thunder's Rockets game because it never happened.
Yeah, so they both lost.
Win that, and now I'm not even sure that they would have. So, we were wrong about that. And then so the next one was the Bucks versus the Celtics.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Celtics won this game.
Let's see.
They did. They won by 1 point.
Oh, wow.
122 to 121.
That was Jason Tatum's impeccable shot over Giannis, and then Giannis missing a free throw to tie the game as regulation ended.
Okay, well, so on that one, you said Bucks, and
I did say Bucks.
Okay, next one, Pelicans versus the Raptors. Now, I didn't even. Let me see.
I don't remember who I said for this one. I want to say I said Pelicans.
Yeah, and I said Raptors. And the wait, they're playing the Thunder right now. That's the wrong game.
The Pelicans did, in fact, win 113 to 99. They beat them quite handily.
Okay, and then the last one was the Mavs versus the Suns, and we both said the Mavs, but apparently it was just the Suns. Right? Because the Mavs, they only won that one game?
Yes, so that was Christmas Eve. The Suns beat the Mavericks by 4 points.
Well, so we definitely had some. Okay, so what big games do we have coming up?
Let's take a look. So, New Year's Day, we've actually got. Let me find out what's making noise on my computer. We've got a Hawks-Nets rematch, which I want to put my money on the Hawks and see if they can turn things around and beat the Nets this time because it was such a close game.
I'm going to say the Nets take that.
All right.
Okay.
This is not letting me look beyond the first. There we go. Let's look and see what other good matchups we have. That one might be good, but we just did a Hawks game.
The Heat versus the Mavericks tomorrow.
Heat Mavericks would be a good one because I think the Mavericks still have really good potential. I just don't think we've seen it. If Jimmy Butler is playing, I'll take the Heat. If he's not, then I'd take the Mavs. But I don't really know when he's coming back, so I'm just going to say Heat and hope that Jimmy Butler is back for that game.
Okay, I have you written down on both with or without Butler. Okay. And let's see. What other interesting?
I never would have thought this would actually be a good game. But on Monday, the Cavaliers and the Magic might actually be a good matchup. Because like we mentioned, the Cavs started 3-0. They've dropped a couple games, but they've shown a lot of promise. And the Magic was the last team to remain undefeated. So that might actually. That's on Monday the 4th. And
a lot of games before then, though, too.
That just didn't all look. I mean, I hope there's a lot of good games, but they didn't look like the best matchups.
And some of them we've seen. Yeah, you're right.
I would take between Cavs. We'll make that our last one, I think, because we're just going over time. I'm going to take the Cavs for the Cavs Magic, even though the Magic had gone undefeated before today or yesterday. I'm a really big fan of Colin Sexton and Darius Garland, the sophomore backcourt for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They've shown a lot of promise. They're having some big improvements in their game. They're both very fun to watch. So I'd love to see those guys have a good season. But on the flip side, it's nice to see Fultz having some success with the Magic after he was kind of written off as a bust when he wasn't doing very well with the 76ers and then got traded for parts, basically. But I'd take the Cavs and hope that that's a very competitive game.
I put Cavs too. I agree with you on that. So we're opposite on two of them, but on that one we agree. We'll see.
All right, so we'll touch base on that on Thursday. We can pick out some more games that will be happening in the coming weeks that we can look at. We'll keep track of all the headlines that are flashing our way from the NBA. And thanks to everyone who stopped in for the show tonight. We'll see you all later.
Happy New Year.